Number 1. Wielding Mjolnir. One of Thor's most impressive feats, and his most symbolic, is his ability to wield his hammer Mjolnir. In Norse mythology, it is shown to bludgeon giants to death, return to his hand when thrown, and never miss. Thor came to own Mjolnir because of one of the trickster god Loki's ill-conceived pranks. One day, bored and envious of Thor's wife Sif and her beautiful blonde hair, he cut it off as she slept. Furious, Thor threatened to break every bone in Loki's body. Loki quickly pleaded that he would go to Svartalfheim, where the dwarves lived, and get them to make hair for Sif more beautiful than she had had before. The dwarves managed to build this beautiful hair, along with the best ship ever created and the deadliest of all spears. Later, unsatisfied with this, Loki went to another set of dwarves and tricked them into making 3 more gifts, saying that he didn't think they could do better than the previous dwarves. But Loki, being the nuisance he was, turned into a gadfly and started to bite at the nose of the dwarf who was in the middle of making Mjolnir, causing him to make a mistake, meaning it had only one flaw, but its handle was too short. The gods see this hammer as their greatest weapon, but unlike in the Marvel comics, there isn't any special enchantment on it. It is just incredibly heavy. In fact, Mjolnir is so powerful and heavy that even Thor, the strongest of all the gods, can't wield it without help. He needs his iron gloves and his power belt to properly use it. Number 2. He killed the giant Baldr and got a free wall out of it. In Norse mythology, there are 2 tribes of god. The Aesir, who are the big brutes and the gods we probably heard most of, Odin, Thor, and Baldr, etc., and the Vanir, a group of nature-loving gods associated with magic and fertility. Once, they had a great war, unsurprisingly called the Aesir-Vanir War. During this war, the walls of Asgard were completely destroyed, so the Aesir gods needed protection. One day, a mysterious hooded man rode over the Rainbow Bridge into Asgard on his giant horse. He told the gods he could build him a wall in just 3 seasons. Impossible for an ordinary man. In return, he wanted the beautiful goddess Freya as his wife, along with the sun and the moon as gifts. The gods laughed at this request, but Loki negotiated by saying he had to complete it in 1 season, without any help other than his horse. The builder got to work with his huge horse carrying the loads. The gods were terrified when they realized the builder was going to finish in time, so Loki decided to turn into a lady horse, distracting him from his work and stopping the wall being built in time. When the furious builder revealed himself as a Jotunn, one strong and quick enough to build a wall around Asgard in just 1 season, he threatened the gods. Odin told him he would be paid exactly what he deserved. So they sent their strongest man Thor in, and the builder did get paid what they thought he deserved, a strike with Thor's mighty hammer, killing the giant instantly, leaving the Aesir with a mostly finished wall and saving Freya from marrying a giant. Number 3. Powers of Resurrection. One incredible feat of Thor in mythology that isn't mentioned often in pop culture is that he was actually shown to be capable of resurrection. Well, sort of, in very specific circumstances. He had a chariot which he rode across the sky, pulled by 2 magical goats. Together, Tooth Snarler and Tooth Grinder created a rumbling sound like thunder when they carried Thor across the landscape. In one myth, Loki, Thor, and his 2 goats were hungry after a day of giant slaying and came across a peasant's home. The peasants inside were upset because they had no food for the gods.
"Not to worry,"
Thor said,
"we'll make our own meal."
and he took a knife and sliced his goats' heads off. Then they feasted on the delicious goat meat of Thor's companions. You see, Thor knew that he could easily bring the goats back to life the next day. This wasn't without its flaws, though. Loki tempted one of the peasant's sons to eat the delicious marrow left in one of the bones. To get to this, he had to snap one of them. When Thor resurrected the goats in the morning, he realized one of them had a limp because of the broken bone. Thor isn't shown to be able to resurrect anyone else in the mythology, but even being a necromancer of goats is pretty impressive. Number 4. He fished a great sea serpent and won a giant cauldron. In the next myth, containing Thor's greatest feat, the Aesir gods throw a raging party in the underwater home of two giants, Aegir and his wife, Ran. Thor, being the frat boy of the gods, loving drink and butting heads with giants, is sent on a mission to get the biggest cauldron in the world, owned by the giant Hymir, so the gods can brew all their beer. When Thor went to Hymir's to ask for the cauldron, the giant offered him food while he stayed, in the form of 3 cows, thinking it would last him some weeks. Hymir was shocked when Thor ate 2 of the cows in the first sitting. Angry Hymir knew they needed more food, so the two went on a fishing trip. The super strong Hymir caught 2 huge whales. Thor kept fishing and pulled at something stuck until he pulled up a huge sea serpent. In fact, the huge sea serpent, Jormungandr, the world serpent, a son of Loki who was so big that he encircled the entire earth. Ymir was both incredibly awed that Thor was so strong that he could pull the colossal serpent from the depths, and fearful because of the devastating damage it could do to the world. Thor was ready to attack Jormungandr, but the scared Ymir snipped the fishing line, sending Jormungandr back into the deep. Thor showed his strength once more by carrying the boat, giant Ymir, and 2 whales all at once to Hymir's home. Ymir was so impressed and fearful of Thor that he gave him his cauldron, ensuring Thor would leave victorious, and quickly. Number 5. Battle with Hrungnir. Thor once defeated Hrungnir, said to be the strongest of all the Norse Giants. His head, heart and shield were all made of stone. The battle came about because Odin challenged the giant to a horse race, from Jotunheim to Asgard. Odin used an 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, who just so happened to be the son of Loki and the Asgard builder's horse from earlier. Hrungnir, having lost the race, started smashing things, threatening to kill all the gods and kidnap Freya and Sif. So Thor was brought in to toss the brute out. Hrungnir challenged Thor to a duel the next day. When Thor appeared at the duel, he noticed that Hrungnir had summoned a clay soldier to his side, who, on seeing the mighty thunder god, wet itself. So Hrungnir, armed with a whetstone, was left to battle Thor by himself. He threw his whetstone straight at Thor, who in turn threw his hammer in the direction of Hrungnir. The 2 weapons had an enormous clash, and a sharp spike of debris lodges itself in Thor's head. Thor is then pinned down by the falling leg of the giant Hrungnir, who he realizes has been killed by a huge piece of debris from his own whetstone. Having defeated the giant, nobody, except Thor's son Magni, was strong enough to lift the leg from his father's body. Number 6. Recovering Mjolnir while wearing a wedding dress. Thor's most outlandish feat in mythology happened while he was wearing a wedding dress. He woke one day and found that Mjolnir was missing. Knowing only a giant would be strong enough to steal it, he sent Loki to Jotunheim to search for it. Loki eventually traced it to Thrym's domain, a particularly mean giant. Thrym told him he would only give it back in return for the goddess Freya as his bride. Surprise, surprise. But the god Heimdall had a plan. What if Thor went dressed as Freya? Despite Thor's protestations and the gods' laughs, Thor was eventually dressed up as a beautiful blushing bride. The poor-sighted Thrym didn't notice anything wrong with his bride to be Freya, but was shocked at her appetite when at the engagement festivities, the goddess devoured all the food and beer. Loki excused this by saying that Lady Freya hadn't eaten in days because she was so excited to marry him. So Thrym decided to give the lady of the hour a wedding present to show his intentions. The bright, shiny hammer called Mjolnir. It didn't take long for Freya to reveal that she was really Thor in disguise and slaughtered a whole wedding party full of giants. A truly red wedding. Number 7. The final battle. Thor's very greatest feat was also Thor's last act. The Norse believed in Ragnarok, the end of the Norse world, which would be brought about by Loki and 3 of his children, Fenrir, a monstrous wolf, Hel, the half-decaying goddess of the dead, and the strongest of them all, Jormungandr, the colossal world serpent. Odin, riding upon Loki's other son Sleipnir, would face Fenrir, and both would ultimately be killed by him. Fenrir would then be killed by Odin's son. Hel's dead champions would fight alongside her father Loki, and the god Freya would battle the fire giant Serpent with his flaming sword, and both would slay each other. Then Thor would face his mortal enemy, the world serpent Jormungandr, who had poisoned a land with his venom. Thor would strike again and again with his hammer Mjolnir, until eventually he managed to strike a fatal blow. Thor would be victorious in killing the legendary snake, but he would take just 9 footsteps, and then succumb to Jormungandr's venom, leaving the world to crumble. But eventually Thor's sons, Mosi and Magni, who survived Ragnarok, will take up the helm, inherit the hammer Mjolnir, and help to rebuild the world. Thor's greatest feat not being that he managed to defeat the serpent, but the children that he left behind. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, and also consider becoming a member so I can make more.